Have you ever been in the shower and just allowed your mind to wander? You consider past mistakes and maybe even some regrets. Standing there lost in the sensation of warmth, you slowly slip into the deep recesses of your mind and the heat of the water begins to fade, and you are instead met with the cold indifference of the vastness of all things. You consider the scale of reality and the sheer insignificance of your place within it. Your thoughts are not but a faint whisper in the endless scream of human consciousness. Looking deep into the void, you see naught but black, chilling indifference. From this ominous ponderance, there is no escape. Anyway, let's talk about Darkest Dungeon 2.
Though all the world's horrors bar the way, the time has come to face your failures.
Darkest Dungeon 2 is a roguelike turn-based strategy game. Roguelike meaning it's for masochistic weirdos, and turn-based meaning the Fortnite sweats are powerless here. We're role-playing as four, hopefully, tragic heroes trying to keep hope alive in a bleak world. It is exactly the same as Darkest Dungeon 1, except completely different. While Darkest Dungeon 1 was set in a single crumbling township, the sequel takes us on a road trip through H.P. Lovecraft's favorite night terrors. Well, on this trip, our merry band of assholes will be fighting eldritch abominations, helping the poor, and of course, touching every cursed artifact we can get our grumpy little mitts on. So why are we doing this? Why is it our job to stand against the relentless tide of darkness slowly devouring what is left of humanity? Simple, because someone has to. Might as well be us, right? That because some academic weirdo told us to. Each run starts with us assembling a party comprised of worst-case scenario human beings. There's a lot to choose from, and they can all be highly customized. Each hero has 3 paths that can be unlocked over time, greatly changing how they function within the party. For example, you can path the Grave Robber into a Deadeye, making them better at ranged attacks but worse at melee, or you could path them into Venom Drop, making them completely useless. After a little skill customization, we pile into a rickety carriage that probably smells like Cheetos, and we're on our way. We do a little sightseeing, some light murder, and then our run begins in earnest. Stopping at the inn, we have a short reprieve before selecting which region we'll throw our doomed idiots at. Kick back and have a few drinks, play some cards.
Repress the undulating core of regrets that lingers on the peripherals of your subconsciousness.
Level up some skills, pimp out your ride, and off we go. You get a limited selection of regions to hurl your heroes at, and most will have modifiers and bonus objectives attached to them. Do them, or don't. I'm not your dad. Each region is broken into a series of locations connected by several paths, giving you the opportunity to utterly fail at basic route planning. The paths between each location vary greatly. You might have a stress-free ride, or you might have to go through a bad neighborhood where your cart will be damaged by unkept roads or vagrants. Basically Barton Street in Hamilton. There's also a chance you'll get to witness unspeakable horrors that raise your loathing meter, or you just might get outright ganked by the locals. Really, the devs just nailed the Barton Street experience. There's a lot of different locations to visit within any one region, and you'll likely end up changing your planned path as your party's situation changes or as new information becomes available. Cash taking up too much space in your inventory? Come visit the Hoarder and buy yourself some sketchy garbage. Spend too much time playing with the dogs? Go to the field hospital, get some Advil, cold flu, and rabies. Feeling bold? Take on some dens or resistance encounters and get yourself some skill point upgrades. Feeling really bold? Pay the cultists of an Oblivion's Ingress a visit and convince them with blunt force trauma to give you a trinket. Or you could always visit the study. I mean, what exactly was that mysterious academic up to anyway? What secrets lie in the tenebrous corners of this damnable workshop? An unknown foreboding is all that exists between the spaces of this unsettling stillness. Perched upon the desk, something unknowable writhes within the darkness. My hands tremble as I reach for knowledge no mortal was meant to possess. Ancient and horrible Each region also has one lair, which contains a difficult boss fight. You'll have to fight through 2 waves of enemies before taking on the big bad, so buckle up. Why do this? Well, in order to access the final area of the game, you need to claim the head of at least one of these lair bosses. Which boss you'll want to take down will depend highly on your party's composition and your available resources. The bosses all have different strengths and weaknesses and are unique to their region. Speaking of regions, there are a total of 6 regions. Each region has unique enemies that will challenge your party's composition in different ways. For example, if you build your party around fire damage, it may not be a great idea to take it to the town where the cultists are immolating themselves for fun. At least not without shuffling your skills around first. So to keep you from getting sent back to the crossroads just a little bit longer, let's go over each one. The Tangle is your basic cursed forest that comes standard with every fantasy setting. The enemies are mostly fallen skeleton warriors and one guy that got lost on his way to band auditions. Skeletons, being more meat deficient efficient than vegetarians, generally don't care if you try to bleed them, so bring some blight and fire skills. Lair Boss, the Dreaming General, uses the power of uncomfortably suggestive posing to cause enough stress damage to end a run. The sprawl consists of religious book-burning fanatics that will set you on fire and murder you at the slightest provocation. Probably the most accurate depiction of Florida in media yet. Unless you're blind to environmental hints, you should probably be able to figure out that burning damage won't get you very far here. Lair Boss, the Librarian, a giant nerd who throws books at you for a few rounds and then throws a fire tantrum. The Shroud is what H.P. Lovecraft thought immigrant communities looked like. This place is fishier than a mysterious death in a submarine and has roughly the same amount of semen. Resistances here vary from enemy to enemy, which kind of sucks. Fog can also sometimes roll in, making the fight way harder, which also kind of sucks. Lair Boss, the Leviathan. I don't actually know much about it because the Shroud kind of sucks and I avoid coming here, so I'm gonna let someone else sum it up for me.
Oh my god. Man, does that ever suck. Woo! Per toxic.
Yeah, that seems about right. The Fetor is the farm that Taco Bell gets its meat from and probably smells like an anime convention. The enemies here are blight-resistant flesh mounds that focus on eating it. Wait, I already said anime convention. Lair Boss, Harvest Child, a giant beef baby that tries to get you to put its meat in your mouth. Wait, no, that sounded. The sluice is a short bonus route that you can take. It's high risk, but high reward. There is no extra conditions, bonus objectives, or map, and it doesn't count as progress towards the final region. The swine folk that inhabit this strange region hit hard, but go down pretty easy. They're highly blight-resistant, but bleed like a stuck pig. Make it through and bring home the bacon. Finally, there's the mountain. Here you'll face a couple of difficult cultist fights before facing off against the final act boss. The enemies and boss here will vary depending on which confession you chose at the start of the run. I'm not going to spoil any of these fights since the reveals are really cool. Just know that these fights are an order of magnitude more difficult than anything you faced up until now. Good luck. Wait, I should explain how to fight. Darkest Dungeon 2 is more streamlined than its predecessor combat-wise. That's not to say it's dumbed down, quite the opposite. I still burn out the vast majority of my synapses each run. At the start of each round of combat, everyone stops what they're doing to play Dungeons & Dragons so that we can roll initiative. Now we just stand around and wait for someone to do something. So what do? Well, each hero or enemy occupies a positional space on the combat field. What can be done depends on the attacker's positioning and what their skill allows. Some enemies can't do anything from the backlines, but let them get to position 1 and... This means that being able to hit every position, especially the back ones, is extremely important. Now you may have noticed the funny little icons below our characters here. That's because combat in this game is just like a poorly written sitcom. It's all about the tokens. These act as buffs and debuffs, as well as indicators for special statuses or abilities. They're mostly straightforward, with a few purposefully mysterious exceptions. But what we really care about is this little guy right here. The combo token greatly alters your options both offensively and defensively. Put one on your enemy and go for a big hit, get one put on you, and prepare for a death's door check if you don't do something to mitigate it. Unless you're running a jester, getting consistent combo tokens can be a challenge, but usually it's one worth pursuing. Or just run jester. Seriously, run jester. Now that offense is out of the way, let's talk defense. We've got two things we care about in combat: health and stress. If you've ever played a video game before or even done a sit-up, you should know what health is. It recovers over time while out of combat and can be recovered in combat with abilities like medicine or angry. Stress is a little trickier. While there's a few ways to reduce it out of combat, they aren't always consistent. Hitting max stress can go one of two ways. Either your character pushes through it and steps up in the party's moment of need, offering everyone a buff in the process, or just like me before an exam, they have a meltdown, lose all their health, and ruin every relationship they've ever had. While health and stress can be easily recovered or managed, relationships cannot. At the start of a region, your characters have a chance to form a bond with one another. Forming a positive bond enhances an ability between the two heroes, offering some positive effect to the other when used. A negative bond, however, debuffs a skill each and locks it in place for the region, thus greatly limiting your character's utility. Buffed skills can sometimes feel like cheating the game's action economy, so it's really important to prioritize good relationships. This can be done by using skills that give assistance to one another, picking location actions that people agree with, or just getting drunk at the inn and playing cards. There's a ton of viable strategies between all the different heroes, so play whatever you find fun. There's no one-size-fits-all party or build, so just like an aging married couple, it's important to experiment and figure out what works and what's just painful. So who exactly are these heroes? There are 12 heroes that fill out the Darkest Dungeon 2 roster, and I'm going to poorly summarize each of them. Highwayman. My boy Dismiss is back. I guess my playthrough of Darkest Dungeon 1 isn't canon. Using his powers of tax evasion, he's able to deal both range and melee damage from almost any position. Maybe this time he'll survive to the very end. Man-at-Arms. Barrison's failure up the military chain of command is our gain. While not as flashy as some of the other heroes, he's easily the best tank/defender in the game. He's even capable of dishing out some decent numbers with the right setup. What he lacks in keeping his army units alive, he makes up for in keeping my runs alive. Grave Robber. Ugh, Audrey is just the worst. As a class, she's fine, I guess, but this is what happens when the horse girl grows up. She can hit through armor tokens and kill through Death's Door, which is cool, but a lot of her stealth-based mechanics just feel awful. Total pick-me vibes. Plague Doctor. With my girl Periclesius, Blight makes right. A decent healer and damage over time dealer. Super versatile. Hit the vape pen with her for bonus damage. Sure, she's done some super questionable research in her past, but who didn't experiment back in college? Boudica, 10 out of 10. Best hero. I mean, just look at those skills. Hits like a truck as long as the enemy isn't in position 3. Every time you see a virgin stress damage enemy in the back lines, it's like, she heals with booze and is literally too angry to die. Waifu material. Run away. You ever want to heal someone by stabbing them with fire? Let me tell you about Bonnie. This is what happens when you get the bad ending in Annie. She's got a bit of a smoking habit, but she's also the queen of fire damage, so she gets a pass. This is what they mean when they say if she smokes, she pokes. Jester. Do you like combo tokens? What about bleed damage? How about sick loot solos? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then Sir Manti is your guy. Man traded Razor's wit for actual razors. What he lacks in raw damage output, he makes up for by being the best stress healer and combo generator in the game. Leper. Baldwin is... Occultist. Do you hate consistency but love tentacles? Alhazred's got you covered. Why do good healing when you could just do 0 and apply a bleed? Well, he's a great debuffer. A lot of his big skills require too much setup to pay off. Or maybe I'm just bad at the game. Fun to experiment with nonetheless. Vestal. Why set fires when you could just be horny on main? Junia attended the same convent as the runaway, but her flame burns a little different. Use the power of repressed lust to heal your allies and bonk your enemies. Just don't let her get distracted by any uncensored hand-holding. Absolute degen. Flagellant. 2 drunks beat Damien's ass so hard that he went and made a religion out of it. Part healer, part blight dealer, all masochists. Spill your own blood to heal your friends, or throw it at your enemies to give them hepatitis. My guy is more toxic than an Overwatch 2 lobby. Just remember, Death's Door resistance is a scam. Bounty Hunter. My man went out for cigarettes sometime after Darkest Dungeon 1 and he's finally come back home. You can pay him some candles to join your party mid-run and it's well worth it. They're a damage-dealing, combo-generating powerhouse that plays well from any position. A true professional. I just wish he'd show up more. And that's everything you need to know to be successful in Darkest Dungeon 2. All the heroes in this game are as diverse and varied as they are tormented. And, well, we may be fighting battles on the outside, each one of them is fighting their own personal battle on the inside. And I love that. I think that's really the heart of this game. But, you know, before I start digging too deep and getting weirdly personal, let's wrap this up. Darkest Dungeon 2 is a game about making the best of a bad situation. It says so right on the tin. Oftentimes, things feel terrible and you barely scrape by, but that just makes your victories all the more sweet. A true testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable horror. Sometimes. Other times you're just left thinking, what now? How can I possibly go on? But you do. On the surface, this is a tactical strategy game about fighting monsters and hentai protagonists so that we can farm candles. But at its core, this is a game about accepting one's past and seeking redemption through heroism. After all, a flame burns brightest just before it goes out. Everyone here sucks, but together they suck a little less. None of us can undo our past. We can only accept those parts of ourselves and move forward. No matter how arduous or stressful the road of acceptance, it's the only path forward. We don't always make the right choices. We screw up, and sometimes that means starting over. We may not all be able to find redemption in the struggle, but among friends, we might at least be able to find peace. So I guess what I'm trying to say, the whole point of this video is just go read Berserk.